environment, for Veolia Environment in the head office in Paris. So having moved to Market Harborough, and got involved with some of the climate change work through Transition Harborough as it was, and then Sustainable Harborough. Um, we uh, we organised for the primary schools to basically protest about climate change and that something should be done. So this all came out of our grandchildren, primary school children shouting in the centre of Harborough outside the council offices, "Whose future? Our future." And that was really moving, because a lot of people today are really worried about climate change. Obviously, the ones that are prepared to do the research and understand what's going on, and we need to take action. So that's how we started Harborough Woodland, based on the needs of the children. Um, so what I suggest with this is, rather than, as Jane was saying, rather than having a presentation, is just to have a chat. And so I think I'll break it into three sections: how we got started, and what we do, and then project examples, and then there's third stage, looking at the future and where things are going, because there's some fantastic opportunities out there. And then after each of the three sessions, I suggest I stop for questioning so that we can clarify any issues at that stage. And Jane, please stop me if I'm getting off track or what have you. Then that would be great. So shortly after we started, we were trying to figure out what to do, and we looked at all the things. I mean, we could have got involved with solar panels, or warm homes, or hard to heat homes, or what have you. And we picked on trees primarily because they're non-political, and it's an open door. And we have in South Leicestershire the lowest woodland cover in the Midlands, the lowest in the UK except for Cambridgeshire, with their fens, have got lower woodland cover. So we're at 3 to 4%. So we're desperately short of trees. I mean, if we were in Surrey with the highest, they're 25%. You're about, I think, about 10%. North Leicestershire is about 19% woodland cover. The Farnham in Surrey, woodland cover for their area is 40%. Some councils are pushing for developers to include 30% woodland cover, and we're at 3 to 4%, which is almost nothing. And we flood, partially because of that. And Market Harborough was built in the wrong place. It's in a clay basin, so with a small outlet. So we're in a sink basically. Anyway, so after we decided to go for trees, and then we gave a lot of presentations. So I think we've given something like 30 presentations since 2020 when we started, to anybody who'd listened, basically. And some of those groups are amazing. And that has created loads and loads of work, so that we were criticized at one of the meetings in a positive way about not being clear about what we were doing. So we had to stand back and really try and figure out what the hell we were up to. And we picked on woods, water, wildlife, and wellness. And so as a strap line, if you like, on a website to say, what are we up to? And shortly after we started, also, Satish Kumar, who's a David Attenborough type, was giving a presentation at just south of Lutterworth, and he was making the point that internationally, innovation comes from communities and businesses, and the reason is it's our risk. So it's not Northamptonshire County Council's risk about biodiversity loss, or the government's risk. Actually, it's our risk. It's our kids' future, and therefore that's why people are really passionate about making positive change happen. So we started small scale by concentrating on schools where the primary schools and secondary schools. And we're now working with about 30 different schools. That led us into a lot of villages, and we've done a number of jobs at pubs, putting in hedges in gardens and doing things like that. And this is all for free. And then through those contacts, through schools, because we enthuse the students who then take it home to mum and dad and talk to the grandparents, and we find out that, oh, uncle's got a farm or granddad's got a farm. And can we talk to them about it, about what we're doing? So that took us into farmers. And as a result of all of this work, we've now planted about 52,000 trees free trees since 2020 in 3 counties. So, locally, well, in North Hampshire, so it's Welford, Great Oxenden, loads, Sibbertoft, but we've been doing work in Rutland, in Leicestershire, all over the place, and it's just growing topsy. So as a result of that, we were getting far too many inquiries. Again, because we're doing it for free. And so we've helped set up 6 or 7 sister groups now, who we're helping. In fact, we're running a training course on Saturday week at Welland Park School about how to do it and what's involved, and handing out standard documents that we've developed from learning from other people in Yorkshire and Devon and all over the country who've been doing this for years. I mean, some are planting 500,000 trees a year. Some of these groups are massive because they've been going for quite a long time. So to finish this bit off, after 3 years, and most of the work's during the winter and quite often foul weather, basically unless it's snowing or the ground is absolutely frozen or we've got horizontal rain with a storm, then we do it. So and most of the people who come for the first time, of all ages, from little kids to grandparents like myself, love it. And they'll come for the first time and go, yeah, all right, okay, I'll come. Oh God, it's raining today, and all the rest of it. But after a few hours, they are beaming, absolutely loving it. And so we asked our core committee of about 16 people, that has attracted now some really interesting people like senior executives from the Wildlife Trust, consultants from environmental groups locally, landscape architects, all sorts of lots and lots of teachers, all sorts of really interesting people. Anyway, we asked them, why the hell are you still with us after 3 years? And we said, right, if Harborough Woodland was a 3-legged stool, what are the 3 legs that are essential for you to keep working with this group and volunteering? Because we're all volunteers. There's nobody paid. And the interesting thing was they came back with 3 priorities from the group. One was their wellness and the benefit they got from it and the fun they had doing it and achieving something that you can see and measure and all the rest of it. Secondly, education, because they were learning lots of new things about what was going on and why their benefits and the benefits to climate change and all the rest of it. And the third thing was about nature and wildlife. So if any of those 3 we'd stopped, they would have said, no, bye, I'm off. And that was really important. The other key thing that we got into with the wellness thing was something that was nicknamed by the headmaster at Welland Park School, where we planted about 1,500 trees for free in the school, and we had all the students there doing it in the pouring rain in January. And he said, this is amazing because I've never seen my students so motivated. And they were out all day. I mean, we didn't get it finished, in the day. The head organised, Dan Cleary organised a second event where he got two primary schools to come in and help the students who volunteered at the secondary school. But he said, what you've created here is magic. This level of motivation, if I could bottle it and take it into classrooms and in maths and science and all the other subject areas, that would be amazing. So we thought about that, and we turned that into what we call community magic. And community magic is where you get a bunch of people like yourselves getting together to do something really worthwhile and having fun doing it. And that's what this is all about. It's achieving something that's really worthwhile because of your benefit of doing it, the benefit the landowner gets from having it, the benefit to wildlife in terms of biodiversity, the benefits in terms of reducing flooding, etc. It just goes on and on and on, and it's a win-win. There isn't a downside to this. We don't need much money. We get all the trees for free. I can tell you where to get free trees from. Really easy. So that's really where I'd like to stop and ask if you've got any questions before we move on to sort of project examples and where we're going in the future. So has anybody got any questions?
Yeah.
Go for it, Claire.
Far ahead, please.
Yeah, you said that you'd been planting, I can't remember the exact number, since 2020, trees. I mean, what size were they? And after 5 years, I mean, I suppose if they're small, they're not going to have too much of an impact yet on flood control. But can you sort of see how that might control the flooding that you
No,
mentioned?
absolutely. Yeah. So vast majority of work we do are whips. We've planted in some standards at sort of 2 metre high at some of the schools where we've got free trees from Leicester County Council, fruit trees and things like that. But the whips, those need watering. Whips don't need watering. And so the survival rate is much higher. So even on big jobs where we put in 6,000 whips, like at Husbands Bosworth at the Gliding Centre, 1.2 kilometres of hedging. They promised to weed them and water them, and they didn't. But we've got about 5% losses. So we do an audit afterwards and go back and recheck. Now so if you plant whips, which are about 30, 50 centimeters high, right? So 2 foot high, something like that. They're really easy to plant. You can easily do 130 per volunteer per day. The biggest job we did was about 5,000 in a day with 70 to 80 volunteers. They survive better than standards, but within 6 or 7 years, they're the same. They catch up with the standards. So and they're easy to get as free trees, as whips. Woodland Trusts supply them now rather than bare rooted. They supply them in pot grown. So there's a bit like buying a plant from the plant man. You know they've got roots and all the rest of it. And soil around. So those are even better at surviving, but they tend to be quite tiny. So yeah. So in terms of benefit for flooding, you're waiting for 8 years before you get a real benefit. The Hedgeling did a research work which was part funded by the Tree Council, and they proved that depending upon the soil type, 1 metre of mature hedge, the soil underneath can retain between 3 to 5 cubic meters of water. So that's 3 to 5 tons of water per metre on mature hedge. So the more hedging we put in, the more trees we put in, the more sponge effect that the soil underneath the trees and hedges have, and the more benefit there is in terms of flood risk reduction. And yeah, sorry, does that answer your question? I'm rambling. Thank you, Claire.
No, that was really interesting answer. And I suppose the other, do you put in any tree protection, any tree guards, or do you just work on the basis that you're planting loads? So there'll be minimal wastage from that.
Yeah, this is quite a
Because the guards can be, if you're getting free trees, the guards would be hugely expensive, wouldn't they?
yeah, no, the guards come with the trees.
Okay.
Yeah, so you can get, so if you go on the TCV website, you can get up to 950 trees. It takes about 5 minutes online to do it, as long as they're in a public access area. So you can't have it in a private garden or somebody's corner of somebody's field,
Okay.
unless there's a footpath going through it. But those come free, 950 of the species that you've selected with guards and canes.
Okay.
Now, most of the guards at the moment, because they're a fraction of the price, are either PVC or polypropylene. So we just go around and collect them all up again,
Okay.
which is the easiest thing. And then the Tubex ones, the polypropylene ones, can be recycled. And the nearest recycling centre is at the Allison Farming Research Centre at no, brain's gone. Just between on the Leicestershire and Rutland border.
Okay.
Yeah. So if the area is fenced or there's no evidence of rabbits, then we have planted without guards, and then you get some losses. But basically, voles, the bark on the young trees is like candy to the animals. It's
Right.
full of
Okay.
sugar. So voles will use the guard as a nice little warm greenhouse and survive the winter in there. They make nests. You've got rabbits, you've got deer. I mean, you name it. Everybody wants to eat the candy off these trees. But generally, the losses are about 5%.
Okay.
And because they're free, we just go back and replant them and just fill in the gaps.
Okay. Any questions from anybody else on that before we move on to the next section?
Okay. So the next thing that happened was we bumped into a lovely lady who was working for Leicestershire County Council at the time, who was moving to the Tree Council, called Sam Village, who lives in Kibworth. And she said she's now the national advisor for the Tree Council. And she was saying, you've got to get into natural flood management. This is crucially because it's one of the biggest applications for planting new trees. So we did that, and that got us involved with flooding. I mean, my background is water, but I've never really been that involved with flooding. But the flooding side is massive, absolutely massive, and it's a big driver for planting new trees. It's a real motivator because if you've got friends or colleagues or family who've been flooded, it is devastating. It's absolutely devastating. The average insurance claim in the UK at the moment is £60,000. You're looking, we've got 2,300 properties at risk in Market Harborough. We've had 50 properties flooded since we started recording who'd been flooded. Nobody knew what was going on because Market Harborough, with 26,000 people, doesn't have a town council, hasn't had one for 50 years. And Harborough District Council at the time weren't really involved with flooding. They just passed the buck and said, well, we need to talk to Leicestershire County Council or the Environment Agency or whoever. So flooding wasn't reported. So when we started, we had no tree wardens in Market Harborough. We had no flood wardens. We had no river wardens. And there was nobody to organise it because it's not part of the district council's responsibility. So we've now got 20 flood wardens. We've got 8 tree wardens. We've got 4 or 5 river wardens. And these are all volunteers and they're brilliant. And we're actually reducing the flooding in Market Harborough, which is the second most at risk town in Leicestershire after Loughborough. So the beauty with trees, with flooding, obviously trees, most people like trees. So politically, it's a nice soft target, as I mentioned. They have the oak and the willows have the biggest collection of wildlife in them. So even a boring old willow that most people treat as a weed is a fantastic home for wildlife. It's only second only to the oak. they provide shade with the sunshine we've got at the moment. You're looking at in town, you're looking at a 20 degrees centigrade difference in temperature between the tarmac and underneath the trees. They're really good for our wellness in terms of and there's a lot of work being done in Japan and America looking at how people recover from serious illness if they've got access to trees, or even if they can see trees. So on the flooding, so big win, and the beauty is you can see them. So if you put in a new hedge, everybody can drive past and say, "Oh, look, that's that new hedge. Oh, my grandson did that, or he was involved, or a family were involved, or what have you." That's a nice change. That's all going to grow up, and that's going to be a benefit to us all in the future. The other thing is, from a flooding point of view, like at the moment, our biggest risk in Market Harborough is flash flooding. It's not river flooding, and this is where, in our thick clay, we've got no soakaways. So the rainwater off our roof goes straight into the combined sewers. They overflow and flood people's houses. And so we've got literally rivers that run down roads in Harborough that just can't cope with the volume of water that we get nowadays. So the beauty with a tree at the moment in your garden or in the nearby wood or the hedge, it's dry. It's a bit like dry washing on the line when there's a thunderstorm. So those trees are sitting there waiting to collect that rainwater, which slows the flow, because flooding comes from excessive flow. The problems in Braybrook and Little Bowden and all these other places that we've had lots of flooding with, it's the peak flow, the river levels or the flows down the street. You get a gradual increase due to the storm, and then you get a sudden peak, and it's that sudden peak that causes the problems. And that's where trees can make such a big difference. The other thing that's hardly ever mentioned about trees is this sponge capacity in the soil underneath. Because if you look at a big oak tree or a hedge, the root structure underneath is the same size as the top growth, right? So you're looking at a mirror image underground. And trees don't survive without mycorrhizames, the fungi. As a fungi are taking the nutrients from the ground that the trees need, and the trees in exchange give them sugar. And this is one of the reasons that a number of farmers we're working with, such as Angus Clark, you may know Great Oxenden with the Waterloo Cottage Farm, we've put in an agroforestry scheme for Angus, where we've put hedges into his grazing field. Any farmers here? By the way, I should have asked that beforehand. Okay, so Angus is into longhorn cattle. These horns are enormous, and he mob grazes, so he moves them all the time. Every day they move on to new grass. And what the hedges do is they provide the grass with sugar. So you actually get a higher grass growth rate next to a hedge. So the key thing with the root structure, though, is that it creates, with the fungi and the organic material and the worms and the insects all pulling material down from the surface. And in our thick clay, if you look at a tree, around the roots of the tree, you'll see this time of year big gaps, big voids. You can put your hands down them where the clay has shrunk away from the tree. So that creates a conduit, that creates a pipe, if you like, for flood water to get down deep into the ground, because our clay is like a sheet of plastic. When it's wet, it has no permeability at all. When it's dry, you get the cracks, but quite often the runoff fills the cracks and then it's got nowhere to go. So the permeability benefits with clay is almost, is very, very poor. So trees break the clay up. They create a sponge structure with the fungi and all the organic material and the insects and all the rest of it underneath in the soil. And that's where the hedge link, I was saying, hedge link is saying 1 meter of mature hedge can hold between 3 to 5 tons of water. So that's the equivalent of 3 to 5 small cars weight of water in 1 meter of hedge. So with all the trees we planted, it's about 7 kilometers of free hedging we put in equivalent. So that's an enormous amount of the water that hedge is actually holding back. Some of the researchers have said that a mature oak tree can hold, the sponge benefit is between 50 and 100 cubic meters, 50 to 100 tons underneath a mature oak tree. So these are crucially beneficial things that we can do as an investment to reduce flooding. Because we're looking at a 25% increase in flood risk. That's 1 in 4 properties in the UK. Now, okay, you've got the areas in the fens which are lower than sea level, but we've got properties flooding in Market Harborough on the hills, not in the valley bottoms, in the hills. And one bungalow has been flooded 4 times, right, that we've been helping. So this problem is getting worse, and so this is a big driver to get trees in the ground, because it's one of the biggest benefits in terms of reducing flood risk. So as projects, as I mentioned, we started with schools. That led us through friends of friends into opportunities in pubs and farms. Most of the work's been with farms, in terms of quantity, because they've got the space, and you've got some of the work we've done. First of all, we're totally customer focused. Most of the charities involved with this, I'm afraid to say, don't actually understand what a customer is. Their customer is the volunteers, perhaps, or the people who supply them with who subscribe, who are members of their charity, or I don't know. But we treat the landowners as customers. It's up to them what we do. Nothing can happen without their permission, and therefore the work we do for the landowners is highly focused to help them achieve what they want to do. And some of the farmers can be who have been abused for generations by different governments, and are highly skeptical about anything to do with government agencies, especially as if it's, I don't know, you take the Environment Agency, 1 minute they're doing farm visits to check that the farmer's not polluting the river, and the next minute they're saying, oh, can we come and talk to you about natural flood management? And the farmer just says, on your bike, I'm not interested, go away. So what we do is, very quietly, through friends of friends, we go and talk to grumpy farmers. Some are lovely, like Angus. Others are really difficult and have got horrendous pressures in terms of just workload and income and everything else. So we've started with a lot of farmers by doing hedge gap filling. Now, if somebody from your local pub drives through a farmer's hedge on his way home because he's had too many, he's got insurance on his car, the farmer hasn't. And to a farmer, that gap in the hedge is a real problem, stock control, you name it. So what we do is, for free, we'll go and gap fill hedges, and we need the farmer to say where and how he wants it done and all the rest of it. So that is a really good way of opening the door to start building a relationship. And the thing we found in 5 years of building relationships through friends of friends, it creates trust. And at the moment, there is almost no trust. There's no trust in government organisations. There's no, that your county council, Leicestershire County Council published a report on community engagement, and the first paragraph says that the county councils in the UK are the least trusted service providers. And so there's no trust. So if we locally can build trust through friends of friends, brilliant, because what that does is opens the door for all sorts of things. You start with gap filling hedges. You move on to, well, what I've always wanted is to fill in that corner of the field that I can't get my tractor through because it's too wet and I can never grow anything in it, but I'd like to have a copse in there. Can you do that for us? Right the way through to opportunities for natural flood management, etc. And we're looking at some potential opportunities for reed beds to polish the outflow from sewage works at the moment, which we can potentially get paid for by Anglian Water on farmers' land and get farmers' income for doing it. And these we've put in two large flag ponds, FWAG. I can't remember what it says. Farming. Anyway, it's paid for by the Environment Agency in Natural England, and these ponds are enormous. I mean, they are boating lakes, and these are for newts. They're free, and FWAG do the planning application. They bring the contractor on site. They build the pond and all the rest of it. So we're on. There's 4 projects on the go at the moment. 2 have been built near Great Bowden. All sorts of things. We've organised for the Hawk and Owl Trust to put up free owl boxes. We've done river surveys with the Wild Trout Trust. We've done you name it, whatever the farmer's interested in. We look at how we can help them. We've been doing wildlife surveys as well recently for some of the farmers to look at the different wildlife species and putting down looking at snakes and newts and all the other things on their farm. So the key thing is we've been doing there is through building trust, through doing the work for nothing. We've created this relationship, and if you can build trust with the schools, that then gets fed out through their students and through the parents and grandparents and all the rest of it. And the farmers all know their local farmers, and so we're passed on. So, for instance, we did a job in Sibitoff. The friends of the people there have got a farm in Clipston, and he wants about 200 meters of hedging putting in, but we haven't got a group in Clipston. We can't do everything, and we spread ourselves too thin. So we're trying to get a group going in Clipston, but have failed miserably so far. It's finding the right people that's key. What else have we done? So there's some brief examples of different projects that we've done. Any questions about that bit?
Anybody got any questions apart from me? Because I'm going to have questions, but I'm happy for other people to go first.
Rupert?
Rupert, yes.
Yeah. Who is we? Because where do you get all these people from?
Oh, okay. Yeah, Facebook. Brilliant, absolutely brilliant. Facebook and WhatsApp. So we've got over 700 people in Harborough Woodland Community Volunteers. We've got 16 committee members who are doing all the work, most of the work in terms of organising things. So we're all volunteers, and basically it's word of mouth and people saying, "Oh, I like that. I'd like to get involved." We've got 4 local businesses who help us, and they provide us with a team of their volunteers who come out for a day out in a field in the rain in winter and have a whale of a time doing it. We had 8 senior executives from Anglian Water come and help us with a project at Smeaton Westerby that they funded most of it on about 4.5 hectares with river restoration and as a natural flood management scheme. So all sorts, more the merrier. Lots and lots of children.
But are you the driver of all this? There must be somebody who's really pushing it all and holding it together.
Yeah, I'm a bit pushy. I used to be chairman, but I'm just recovering. I'm just finished chemotherapies, so I had to back off for 6 months. So it's all over now. Thank heavens it's finished. I could get back to getting fit again. But so I handed over the chair. In fact, it's to my daughter-in-law, who's a doctor of science or biology, very passionate, especially about communities, about the children's future and all the rest of it. But we've got it's through word of mouth has just attracted lots and lots of people who like what we're doing, and are motivated by the people that we're working with, and they're there. And very often, one of the presentations I give, there's a diagram from the local nature recovery strategy presentation, which is a cartoon showing it's a cartoon of various tsunamis hitting us. The first one is COVID, and then the next one was the financial crisis. No, COVID, financial crisis. Can't remember which way around it goes. And then climate change, and then biodiversity loss. And biodiversity loss is absolutely colossal. And these are and a lot of people who are thinking about these things, like you guys, are really quite angry about the lack of activity and the lack of effort. And why does it take 3 years to get somebody from one of the risk management authorities to consider an opportunity? Well, one, because they've not been funded for the last decades, and so they're desperately short of people, and they're desperately overwhelmed by workload, and so they just can't get to it. That's not their fault. It's the system. And so many things are broken at the moment. So on the flooding side, we're working with national groups and to look at building community capacity, because it's our risk. People say, well, why don't, we pay our rates, why don't the council come and clear the drains? They're broken. I mean, Leicestershire County Council are broken. Your council went bankrupt, so that you know what happens. And so what we're doing is the easy things with our local knowledge and our friends network that actually help them, and they love it, because we can stop them wasting their time by training people how to report a blocked road drain.
So this leads one on to questions like insurance. Because if you've got all these people working on land which isn't theirs, I mean, I live in the middle of Althorpe, and they don't really like us doing anything on their land. So how do you, presumably you've got to be an organisation with insurance and everything to cover it all, because we're also preoccupied with those sort of issues these days. In the past, I mean, I used to do some of this in the 1970s as part of a conservation group, and have a local action weekend when we got all the schools out doing things. But we never worried about insurance or anything. Never talked about that. But nowadays it's quite difficult to do anything.
No, you're absolutely right. So we're a bit odd, because as a volunteer group we run it as a business. So volunteers are actually by law employees, and therefore you have the same employment responsibility that you do with a paid employee. So we have insurance. I mean, it costs us £100 a year for 5 million public liability and employee liability insurance. That's through the RHS. Again, this is one of the things we go through at our training session Saturday week at Roberts Myers School. And you can get a similar deal from the TCV, the conservation volunteer group, do a similar thing with Aviva. Anyway, so so we got insurance. We do risk assessments on all the work we do. We audit all the jobs we do, so we can learn from what worked and what didn't work, and then go back and replace the ones that are dead. But the nice thing is, because there's no money involved, some of the school projects, one of the primary schools ordered 420 trees from Woodland Trust for free, and they didn't arrive. So we used the trees we'd already got for another job for theirs, and then when theirs arrived, we picked them up and used them for the other job. So you can just swap around, which gives you a great flexibility. And we haven't got to bid. There's no tendering, there's no quotes, there's no payment, there's no and so it just removes all that financial hassle, which is wonderful. We have had donations from landowners. Some of the landowners are very wealthy, and some people we've talked to have said, well, you shouldn't be doing that. They should be paying for it. But actually, one of the landowners we've worked for is a managing director of a very large international bank who's got a very large estate, and we've done 2 projects for him, but he is wonderful. We went to him, one of the projects we did in Great Bowden, the friends there, we've done a lot of work for them, put in a flag pond and about 2,000 trees on about 10 acres on the Hursley Park estate in Great Bowden. And Chris Attenborough said, oh, the field's next door up for sale. And he said, do you know anybody we can get to buy them? Because then we could extend what we're doing for wildlife into that land as well. Anyway, it's 54 hectares, 1.5 million. So I phoned up our banking friend and said, oh, do you know where we can get 1.5 million from to buy this land? Anyway, he was a great help, but the Wildlife Trust have picked up the challenge, and Harborough District Council have bought it as a public park, because Market Harborough doesn't have a public park. We've got the Welland Park in the centre of town, but that's it. There's nothing else. We have to drive to Northamptonshire to find a wood to walk in. So this is 54 hectares. That all came from us. That came from the community. That opportunity came out of the community. Yeah. So does that answer your question, Rupert? Sorry. Brilliant. Thank you. Any?
So Anissa has put a question into the chat, saying, do you manage the trees after they've been planted? And I think possibly she may have put that in a minute or two ago, so I'm sorry, Anissa, if I missed it. So you might have already partly answered that, but is there anything you can add to what you've said in terms of going back and auditing and so on?
Yeah, no, very important. Auditing, yeah, the chap Russell, who organises the auditing, is a quality control engineer in the automotive industry. So he is, you don't question what he's doing, and he's really passionate about improving what we do and how we can do it. So we go back and audit. We've done some weeding. We collect the tree guards. Anything we can do, basically. We do a lot of survey work during the summer. When it's not, because planting is only from November to March, and March, it's almost November to February now. March now is getting so warm. A lot of the trees are going into leaf and it's too late. So we need to get them in the ground when they're dormant. We haven't done any knocking up. So knocking up is what is the technical term for managing woodlands, where you go in and clear the side branches and do things like that, because we've only been going for 5 years. So I planted a wood in Derbyshire which we still own. We go and camp in it and we knock up there. So and clear the coppice trees around the standards of the oaks and the beeches and things like that. But no, we haven't started that, but we will do. And it's really anything that the volunteers want to do. Oh, we've been doing some hedge laying as well. So we got 3 hedge layers. Yeah, anything really. Hope that helps. So any other questions?
Claire, you've got your hand up.
Yes, I was interested in something that you said on the Great Bowden Hursley estate. You said that you used machinery to dig out the flag ponds. So is the machinery provided by the landowner, or do you have access to the machinery? You don't know who pays for it?
No, it's part of the contract. So FWAG bring in a contractor to dig it all out. So big diggers come in and move all the materials and all the rest of it. So this is all controlled by FWAG on behalf of the landowner. Clearly, we need to have landowner permission, and we need to have planning permission as well, which FWAG organise, but it's paid for by the Environment Agency and Natural England. Yeah.
So the landowner decides that that's what they want. It's nothing, you know, there's not kind of an overview of from the local authority that are suggesting that, well, we could have this this pond there to help with the sewage overflow, potential overflow in flood times. So it was purely their relationship with you that instigates this practice.
Yeah, and these are not flood measures. These are not for flood reduction. These are for wildlife
Oh, I
opportunities.
see. Because you mentioned reed beds.
Yeah, newts travel about 2 kilometers. And so ideally you want ponds, big ponds, as a network. And I'll come into this more when we look at local nature recovery strategy, because this is all part of the joined up thinking to be able to connect all these areas together, because we've got too many isolated areas where there's not the connectivity with other areas.
Yeah, sorry, I misunderstood the reed bed part of it.
No problem. That's great. What just briefly on flooding and the future. We've got really experienced groups that we've been getting advice from on tree planting from all over the UK. Anybody from amazing people in Shropshire and Devon, as I mentioned, and Wales and Yorkshire, and it's a lovely group called Tree Responsibility in York. And then we've done the same with flooding. So we've been working. We've got special friends in Calderdale and Stroud and elsewhere, and we've been picking their brains basically and finding out, what do you do, how do you do it, how on earth did you get that paid for, so we could set up our own schemes locally. So now on the flooding side, again, which the big benefit with flooding is it's a great driver for planting more trees. So we've got a flood action group in Harborough, which includes a number of the villages. Gloucester had 25% of its properties flooded. It's only a hamlet, so five out of 25 properties had half a metre of water through the insides. So we're working with. So that's a flood action group. Flood action groups are recognised as a national organisation and promoted. We set up our own flood hubs on WhatsApp because the key thing about all of this stuff is having the local knowledge to be able to make change happen, and building a local network of like you guys, so that local network can self-help and learn how to do things from other people. So we've now got 7 flood hubs, and they include Great Glen, Oadby, Braybrook, all over the place. And again, and we've just started on Facebook the Midlands flood action groups as well, to share experience in Nottinghamshire and Staffordshire and the West Midlands and all the rest of it, so that communities who are isolated, and because the risk management authorities are overwhelmed, neglected, so the communities are neglected, can self-help, and so we can all help each other basically to do things. And this leads us on to the third section, basically about the future, because local nature recovery strategy is now the 2 in North Hants are launched. Leicestershire County Council are launching in about a few weeks' time. But these are saying, where do we need trees? Where do we need hedgerows? Where do we need ponds? Where do we need natural flood management? So these are crucially important. And local nature recovery strategy under the Environment Act is higher in priority than planning or environmental land management for farmers and other things. So this is a crucially important bit of legislation to help us. And the other thing that's going on in the background, which is similar, is that the Midlands Engine with the National Forest and the Woodland Trust have launched the Midlands Forest Network. And the Midlands Forest Network covers an area, Midlands Engine area, from the Welsh border to the Lincolnshire coast. And it's the second largest economic area in the UK. They want to increase the average woodland cover from a 7.5% for the whole area, 7.5% to 19%. Now, this is a big change. This is a big driver. And it's still fairly early days, but we're part of the forum who've helped steer this this organization to where it's got to so far. And this is all like local nature recovery. This is down to local mapping and identifying hotspots and priority areas, which will hopefully attract government funding in time once it's up and running. So those are big drivers, but nothing happens. Our experience over 5 years is that nothing happens unless the community are involved and community landowners say yes. Because the government and UK law at the moment is there to stop things happening. On flooding, because of the lack of funding, the lead local flood authority are having to focus on a small number of big jobs because they're easier to justify than a large number of small jobs. And so villages just get ignored, completely. Anyway, it's very, very frustrating. And it takes 3 years to get somebody to come and visit and talk to you. But with community involvement and your local knowledge and your friends network and your innovation, because it's your risk and your children and grandchildren's risk, that motivates and makes change happen. And the Smeaton and Westerby natural flood management scheme, which probably costs about £1.5 million to £2 million to implement, which was mostly paid for by the Environment Agency and Anglian Water and Harborough District Council and others, was started by ourselves because we got a message from the landowner with a picture of him standing on an island in the middle of his field saying, what the hell do I do with this? And he's literally, all his fields were flooded. We got the Rivers Trust involved and the Environment Agency involved. And 3 years later, they completed, along with us putting in about 2,000 trees, the natural flood management of Smeaton Westerby, which you can go and visit. It's a gorgeous site. There's a footpath through the middle of it, and it really is worthwhile visiting. So the river has been re-landscaped. They have included new ponds to reduce flooding, and it's the Smeaton and Westerby nature project. If you look that up on Facebook, two brilliant landowners involved with the 4.5 hectares of land. That all came from us creating the opportunity, and we've created 17 opportunities like that at the moment. One on the other side of Great Bowden is about 100 acres, 50 hectares. So I just reinforce what Satish Kumar said, was that innovation comes from communities and business because they're the only people with the risk. And that's a really important fact in what you're doing. And nothing happens without community and community landowner support. I'll leave it there. I think we've got about 15 minutes to finish. If there are any questions.
Yeah. Questions from anybody? I mean, this is, yes, David. You need to unmute, I think, probably. Yeah.
Yeah, I just spotted that one down. Thank you.
Okay.
Done it many times. I'm in Northampton. We have the Nen, as we like to call it here, running right through. We have had one major flood incident one Easter many years ago.
Yeah.
I'm sitting here listening to your story and thinking, how can I make a link? What is the risk, if you like, for people of Northampton that I can put in front of them to get them involved in projects like this? We have had our famous Bilin aquadrome that floods quite often, but that tends to get ignored by councils and population alike because they're well, caravans. That's not the right, mobile homes, whatever. So I'm just struggling. I guess it's my problem, and I'm going to have to find, or we would have to find a way through it. But just trying to see a link to get them involved.
Yeah, I think, I mean, we can supply, if you want to, we can supply you with a presentation. And we found through giving presentations to schools and WIs and gardening groups and, oh, you name it, all sorts of groups, that opened the door and created an opportunity. And you only need a couple of people saying, oh, this is important. We need to do something. How can we start? And it can be driven by flooding. It can be driven by biodiversity loss. It can be driven by looking after the grandchildren's future, what have you, or just getting on and doing something really worthwhile. We've got, we're working with the litter pickers, the wombles. That is massive. That is really enormous. And so why are people doing it? Well, because they want to get on with something worthwhile, and you can see the difference. And that's what tree planting is about. So our wombles that we work with are checking road drains now as well. So they're checking and reporting road drains or clearing them if they're just covered in brash and rubbish that's washed down and blocked the surface of the road drain. Because they understand that those road drains are crucially important in terms of flash flooding. And so you should have in Northampton a flood action group. They should be looking at your long-term flood risk from the Environment Agency, which shows you where the flooding is going to occur if it hasn't already occurred. And it shows you which roads turn into rivers and which back gardens turn into rivers, depending upon where the rain falls. So I think, I mean, Great Glen had a horrendous problem with 55 houses flooded. So that has motivated their community to get on with it. And then they were told by various politicians that the new development upstream from them is going to increase their flooding. So that motivated them even more, which is actually a lie. But, you know,
that's politicians for you.
Yeah, absolutely. It's disgraceful. Absolutely. They should have, you know, they have no shame. It's disgraceful. So we the more we can do, it's just really a case of trying to find the right way in. And obviously climate action groups are really important. So flood action groups, anybody you can find who'll listen. And then over 5 years, we've collected a big group of supporters. So, I mean, the Hindu action group, the Muslim action group in Leicester have been out planting trees with us. Yeah, the Muslim Women's Climate Action Group, I think they're called, have got a target of getting 500,000 trees in the ground. So that, you know, these are some really dynamic individuals who are keen to help. So yeah, it just keep banging on doors, really.
Thank you for that. It's given me a few clues. Thank you.
Sorry, I'm on mute now, Claire.
Yeah, I'm not on mute, am I?
No, you're all good.
Okay. Yeah, I was interested again in how you decide where the rows of trees or the hedge is. I mean, do you follow contours? Do you have any kind of expertise or this? I mean, I'm not kind of accusing you of not having expertise, of course, but you know, how do you decide where the lines of trees should be?
Okay, yeah, we're not specialists. We started 5 years ago with very little knowledge other than planting a wood up, and I've done hedge laying and stuff like that. So we just did research, and we got onto the Tree Council and Woodland Trust and Uncle Tom Cobley and all, and said, look, we're doing this. What do you suggest? There are it also very much depends on the landowner. Most landowners, most of the farmers know what they want in terms of species and where and all the rest of it. A lot of the private landowners aren't too sure. So we've been very lucky in with having landscape architect with us, who used to have a job designing new towns, and uses AutoCAD, which we pay towards her AutoCAD license and all the rest of it. But no, she's brilliant. So, but I mean, I've got lots of teachers in the family. So we found her through my son, who used to be a teacher in Leicester, and he was friends with her husband. And it's just through friends of friends and saying to people, oh, look, we're doing this. What do you think? Do you want to get involved? But Susie's been brilliant. But again, with the volunteers, people only do what they want to do when they can. And we have no deadlines. We have absolutely no bullying. People only do what they want to do when they can. And if they can't do it for family reasons or work or what, not a problem. Or health. I've been out of it six months, so or health or what have you, it's not a problem. Because that way we create a culture where people do what they're motivated to do. And that really works a treat.
Thank you.
I think that's a really helpful thing to say, actually, because I think there are not enough people in the world who are willing to volunteer, it appears. But perhaps part of it is what you were saying before about drawing people to what you're doing because it's enjoyable and it's fun. So it's not making it feel like it's a chore or something that people ought to do. It's something that they want to do.
Yeah, it's like the litter picking. It's like the Wombles. Oh, David in Northampton. There's a brilliant group called More Trees who are putting in urban trees with the council agreement. So I can't remember the name of the lady there, but they're doing some amazing stuff. But they're putting
is that
street trees.
Street trees.
Street trees. That's it.
Yeah.
We know her. She's excellent, yes. But I think she's stepped back a bit from that now.
Okay.
She has, because she's got a full-time job now. But yes, she was doing some great work. And
there's also that we helped set up the Northamptonshire Woodland Community Volunteers as well.
Yeah.
With
Mick sends his apologies, but yeah.
And he is like us, is really keen, and Mick's been much more dynamic on this, but because we've been run off our feet with getting free trees from other people, including I haven't mentioned where they come from actually, but he's been the pioneer locally with More Trees Now, which is a Dutch scheme started 20 years ago. We were really chuffed planting 5,000 in a day. That day in Netherlands, they did 180,000 free trees. I mean, they've between 20 groups over 20, they were built up over a 20-year period. These are all harvesting whips that are not going to survive in a wood, self-seeded whips that they then sort and then distribute, so people can come and pick these up and plant them for free. So we're talking to the Midlands Forest Network and others about this, because that needs to be rolled out nationally, because there's no cost involved. It's fun to do. The disease risk is low because it's all local trees. So passport issues on trees and all the rest of it isn't a risk. So it's a win-win that's well proven, and it's proven now in Netherlands, France, Germany, Ireland, and now we're starting in the UK. But again, it's all community driven. This whole thing is finding volunteers and doing things that people enjoy.
Yeah, and just in case, I think it would be really useful to see the presentation that you mentioned to David. Claire and I actually went out and did a presentation to a school. It's the first one we've actually done to a school as a group, Climate Action West Northamptonshire. And it went really well. So it is the kind of thing that we'd like to do more of, if we can find the resource to do it.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
scouts and cubs and beavers and all the rest of it. We've had at Waterloo Cottage Farm, we got Angus £1,500 grant from the Tree Council, which is not the easy way of doing it. We learnt our lesson because of the bureaucracy that's involved. But anyway, then they turned around and said, have you got any children involved? And we said, well, yeah, a few. And they said, well, we'll approve it if you get lots of children. So we got 100 scouts out.
No.
And they had a whale of a time.
Yeah.
And Angus, bless him, Angus organised, they had two training sessions about agroforestry beforehand as part of their scout training, and they had a whale of a time. It rained, but it's that's the sort of fun, and the enthusiasm with the youngsters is just contagious. So that's really really good fun. Yeah, so we get free trees from the easiest place to get them is up to 950 is TCV. That's literally a few minutes, online from TCV. We get them from Woodland Trust. Woodland Trust have been brilliant. They've got a partnership with Leicester County Council, so we've had probably 30,000 trees from Leicester County Council. They've got a target of getting 700,000 trees in the ground. So we're helping them, and we're helping them establish a local drop-off depot in South Leicestershire because of the level of activity in this area, because the depot at the moment is north of Leicester, which is not convenient. We national highways, we get 6,000 a year at the moment from them, all for free. We get donations from people who grow their own. We get donations from nurseries. There are national schemes, as with the Tree Planting UK, where nurseries have been let down and have got excess stock, so they burn them. And we had thousands of oak trees 2 years ago as a result of that. So there's all sorts of different, and that's what we need to share between us all. We've got a group. How do we do this? Where do we get our insurance from? Where do we get the trees from? How do we do a risk analysis and all the rest of it? So we've got to give a presentation to a community group or to a school. What material can we use? That if we share all this stuff, it makes it easier rather than reinventing.
Definitely.
And we've got it from other people. So it's not us.
Again, that's part of the beauty of it being a volunteer group, is it? That no one feels precious about hanging on to the stuff.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, that's brilliant.
And the group Slow the Flow in Calderdale, who are good friends of ours and who are doing work in Westminster and all sorts, they were saying number one priority is social media, absolutely crucial. And then volunteers, and then organizing yourself so it's fun, and so on and so forth. So on, for instance, on projects. So we've got WhatsApp groups. We've got so many WhatsApp groups for the management team, management committee. We then set up WhatsApp groups for the working groups. So on a farm or where have you, or in the school. So there's a small team of people working on that project and leading that one. And then other people come in and help. All sorts of things like that make it so much easier. And the key with this is, in your community in Northampton or where in your village or where have you, it's your local knowledge that's so important. Where the local people. There's a network. Oh, I want to try and get to see the so and so at that school. You can go and bang on the front door or email them, and you won't get a reply. But if you go in through a friend of a friend who knows the head or the secretary at the school, or even the caretaker, just use that private route to get in. because all the schools are run off their feet. They can't cope with the workload. And the last thing they want to do is to talk to you until they find out it's for free. I mean, 3 of the schools in Harborough flood. I mean, Welland Park, really serious flooding problems. They were going to shut the school. So, you know, so the flooding and trees and all the rest of it is a real bonus for them. But friends of friends, local knowledge, that innovation coming from your community because it's your risk. These are all really strong drivers, and they're not the drivers that the authorities have. Their drivers are law and what we have to do. And it's a tick box mentality, you know, rather than being passionate about making change happen. I mean, there are some brilliant individuals who I can name quite a few in Leicestershire County. We were dealing with about 20 people in Leicestershire County Council at the moment. Some of them are amazing, absolutely amazing. And they don't come from a council background. They come from, you know, a business or what have you background. They're absolutely amazing. So I think that local knowledge, that networking, that enthusiasm. And the thing is, if you're motivated, your enthusiasm is contagious. And it's like a virus. And other people pick up with it and say, hey, we could do that. Anyway, I talked too much.
Sense. Well. No, thank you. That's really, really brilliant. I think, and actually, just to add a little bit before we wrap it on that last, I think that then the problem is as well that people become, they just sit back and expect the authorities to do everything. They go, why aren't they doing this? Why aren't they doing that? Well, you know, as you said, they can't do everything. And actually, there are things that's better done locally anyway. But thank you, Bruce, so very much. That's been a really, really useful and interesting talk. Very, very motivational indeed. And I hope will lead to something more happening in our area. There are definitely lots of learnings we can get from that. I just want to say a couple of very brief things before I let people go, because I'm aware it's past 9 o'clock. Our next meeting is on Thursday the 17th of July and actually ties in really well with some of what Bruce was talking about, because we've got Ruth Rolls from West Northamptonshire Council, who's their local nature recovery officer, talking about the local nature recovery strategy for West Northamptonshire. So I think that links in really well with this, and hopefully we can see how a work of a group like us can help support the delivery of that local nature recovery strategy, which is something that's very important to all of us. And then we don't have, sorry, go on, Claire. Yeah.
I was just going to say that I think Rupert and I are going to the Welland, the Robert Smythe Academy.
Oh, brilliant.
Oh,
excellent. Yeah, good. Really
brilliant.
I can't get there, so that's really good. Excellent. And so then I was going to say, we don't have a meeting in August. By tradition, we don't have one. Most people probably glad to have a break. And then in September, we're back 18th September with the MP for Northampton South, Mike Reeder. I'm not entirely sure what he's going to talk to us about yet, but I hope it will be an interesting talk and, you know, a good opportunity to get face to face with a local politician and have a robust discussion, I feel. Does anybody else have anything that they've got a burning desire to mention before I let you all go?
Bruce, that was absolutely brilliant and inspiring. Thank you so much.
Totally agree. Totally agree. Thank you so much. Really appreciate your time. Thank you.
Any way we can help.
Yes, I'm sure we'll be in touch. Thank you very much. Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.